Hey, the name's Cruel. That's King Rob Rule. I'm about to address the subscribers now, so if you want to skip ahead to the weapon rankings, there are timestamps below. Anyway, long time no see everyone. It's been way too long. I've had some personal issues I've had to deal with since the last video, so that's why I've been away. However, this morning I woke up feeling fresh, and I read a comment from a viewer saying they're enjoying the content and that I should update the weapon rankings for Rise. So here I am. Also, while I think of it, I think it's been incredible the amount of interaction and growth I've had while essentially not uploading anything at all for 2 months or so. So a massive thank you to everyone who has watched, liked, commented, subscribed, or shared. It's nice to see that all the hard work is still creating an impact out there. Now, if you were following my videos earlier, you would know that I was due to release an Iceborne video next to finalise my review on Monster Hunter World. Yeah, that won't be happening for a while. It will come out one day, but there's no way I'm not covering Monster Hunter Rise until I've had my fill. While I haven't been in the headspace to make content, I have definitely been clocking up hours in Monster Hunter Rise. By the time I upload this video, I'll be long past 300 hours of playtime, not to mention my second character. Yes, I know, I'm crazy. Which is 20 plus hours rocked up? So yeah, I've been playing a lot, and not a day has gone by that I haven't thought about making content, but here I am now. I do plan on reviewing the game as a whole, but seeing as the 3.0 update is just around the corner, I figure I may as well wait for that so I can review the story content in its entirety. So until then, I'll be making some smaller scale content while we wait for that to drop. Anyway, enough rambling, let's dive right into the weapon rankings. Now, just before I start listing off my personal weapon rankings, I thought I'd just quickly flash my guild card so you have an idea of how much hands-on experience I have with each weapon. Anyone who watched my previous weapon rankings for the demo should already be able to see how much my opinions may or may not have changed. I can't possibly play all weapons equally, so of course there will be personal biases, so keep that in mind. But this just shows how much I've messed with the different weapons on this character. I also have a secondary character that I main bowguns with, so I'll just quickly show that guild card too. Another thing to keep in mind with this list is that so many weapons are close together for me that they could be interchanged quite easily. For example, ranking 12 to 6 are all extremely close despite being quite spread out. The top 5 are also really close, but they are my definitive favourite weapons in the game. Well, there you go. Let's get ranking. Number 14, the bow. Surprise, surprise, right? You saw the guild card. I just don't vibe with this weapon. I'll just leave this clip here, and it will speak for itself and in terms of why I don't enjoy it. And just in case you didn't take the hint from the footage, I suck at it. And it's really frustrating because I see how people go on and on about how it's one of the most powerful weapons in the game, and yet I managed to get more DPS out of a lance, which many seem to see as the definitive worst weapon in the game. That very statement makes me want to make a video about best, worst, and so-called viable weapons in Monster Hunter. Keep an eye out for it. It may not be what you think, but I digress. Yes, I rank the so-called best weapon in the game the lowest. Not out of spite, not out of irony, but simply because it doesn't fit my playstyle whatsoever.
2 hours later.
I know the theory, kind of, but I struggle on the execution. But chances are, one day I'll come back to it determined to master it, and I'll eat my words. Just right now, I'm having too much fun with the other weapons to even want to learn. But anyway, moving on. Number 13, the Lance. So you probably thought that since I was sticking up for the Lance in the previous ranking, that I'd rank it higher? Think again. While I've played a great deal of Lance in previous entries, loved it, and still think it's a great choice in this game, it has its place down here for a reason. It just doesn't have that style factor that the other weapons possess. But not only that, but when compared to most other weapons, the damage output, even when playing at a high level, leaves something to be desired. Hold it! Now, I've wrote that into the script, but since then, I've discovered this speedrun in the arena with a Lance player playing against the Rajang. And I believe he cleared it in under 2 minutes, and it's probably the most incredible gameplay I've ever seen in Rise. So I might just leave a link to that video in the description below, and I'll flash his name up on screen, and all credit goes to you, buddy. You're amazing. However, Lance still has a place in the game as the definitive most powerful shield in the game, and in my opinion, one of the safest weapons to use against some of the more aggressive monsters like Tigrex and Diablos. On another positive note, I think Shield Charge is one of the most alpha switch skills in the game. Poor Hammer, just about anything can KO now. To anyone who ever has a problem advancing in the game or wants to try a more defensive build, Lance is my number one recommendation for you. But when I compare it to some of the other weapons in the game, I just personally don't find it as fun. Number 12, the Charge Blade. From this point onward to about number 6, there's not much in it when it comes to my preference, so try not to be too triggered. For me, Charge Blade had to go down here, not because it's a bad weapon, but because it's too slow for the fast-paced gameplay I enjoy in this game. Or should I say, I'm too slow with it. Or too bad. You be the judge, the gameplay here can speak for itself. Now, I know my way around the Charge Blade from previous games, but these switch skills are just not clicking with me. Axe Hopper is kind of cool, but to me it leaves you way too open for too little reward. I'd much rather the counter peak performance skill, which I think is way overpowered, but I won't complain. And while the condensed spinning slash is just about the coolest looking thing in the whole game, my mindset is, why on earth would I use the huge opening required to use this skill on just that, when I could simply do a super amped elemental discharge? With counter peak performance equipped, it seems like most of the time you shouldn't have too much trouble filling up files, so the loading of files with condensed spinning slash feels a bit gimmicky to me. But long story short, the weapon just doesn't click as well as others to me. But in the right hands, Charge Blade is, and always has been, a force to be reckoned with. Number 11, Greatsword. The absolute and undeniable king of raw damage on single hit, the Greatsword is back. And I'm a fan. For me, Rise was the game that allowed me to fully appreciate Greatsword, because now, with all the increased mobility of Y-bugs, it's become easier to land those massive hits at the right moment, as well as get out of danger faster when you miss. In previous games, the risk versus reward factor of Greatsword was much higher, but it seems that in Rise, the risk has been lowered considerably, and the reward factor has risen with it. Missed that huge aerial dunk you were going for? No worries. Just cancel your end lag with the power sheath, simultaneously getting out of the way, while giving yourself a completely unnecessary attack boost. It's all good. It's kinda silly when you put it that way. Now I could talk more about the switch skills, but that would be kind of dishonest because I don't really care about them. What I care about is taking a Greatsword into a rampage, and when the counter gong goes off, see those redonkulous damage numbers go off. I also love bringing it to the Nawa fight, and true charge slashing, what we all know but won't admit, is its pregnant belly. Oh, don't look at me like that, it's just a game. Now moving on to number 10, the Sword and Shield. This is the first iteration of Monster Hunter I've given the Sword and Shield a chance. And holy wow, this is one of the most satisfying weapons to play when you execute properly. There is way more to this weapon than meets the eye. You've got elemental damage with the sword, KO damage with the shield, counters with the wire bugs, and huge damage potential with the right openings with that juicy Perfect Rush combo. Perfect Rush just might be my favourite thing to do in the whole game, but seeing as I'm an SNS noob, I mess it up quite often. There is just so much more to think about with the SNS at any given moment in a hunt than I could have ever imagined. There seems to be a combo for any little situation you could think of. And with the ability to do blunt damage as well as cutting damage, you have the opportunity to deal optimal damage on any part of the monster. And the blunt damage is not kidding with SNS in this game. It does far more KO damage than it has any right to, and once again I am feeling sorry for the hammer. In fact, who thinks the hammer should be given some kind of cutting ability, like maybe a barbed wired wire bug move? Geez, say that 10 times fast. But wait, we're talking about Sword and Shield. Metsu Shurigeki is king. Enough said. Number 9, Longsword. Here we are, the most divisive weapon in the game, the Longsword. But I'm not here to hate, and I'm not ranking it lower down to trigger anyone. This is just my personal opinion. Yes, I'm aware, more than aware in fact, that the Longsword is capable of nutty damage, but damage is never my top priority when it comes to weapon choice. Before anything else, it has to be fun. It just so happens, when it comes to fun factor, Longsword ranks about here for me. This is mostly due to my current skill level with the weapon, and my biases with the weapon in previous games. Now let's start with that. Now my favourite iteration of Longsword has to be Striker Style in GU, where I could equip Sakura Slash, basically the same as Rise, Unhinged Spirit, move that maxes spirit gauge and won't decrease over time, and Critical Juncture, which is essentially the same as Serene Pose. So in theory, you can imitate this playstyle in Rise. However, the cooldowns for Hunter Arts and GU were much more meaningful because they were dependent on how aggressive you were attacking the monster. Not only that, but the cooldowns were much longer than the Wirebug cooldowns. This made landing that critical juncture all the more satisfying. You'd only get like 1 or 2 per fight, and like 3 if you were really pushing it. However, I find the spammable nature of Wirebug moves in this game make the feeling of landing Serene Pose much less meaningful. Like, it doesn't matter if I miss, because the Wirebugs will be back soon anyway. I just don't get that same dopamine rush with Longsword in this game. Also, I don't think Soaring Kick should be a Wirebug move. It was a core move in Iceborne, and I can't see why it can't be in this game. Well, I know why they did it, so it wouldn't be completely broken with the way Sakura Slash functions, but I still think it's possible to balance it. For example, maybe make it a core move and restore Sakura Slash to a 2 times Wirebug move with a longer cooldown. I'd be interested to hear other people's thoughts on this. Anyway, point is, not the best with Longsword, but one day I'll be really good with this weapon and it will rank at like number 3 or something. But until then, moving on. Number 8. The Heavy Bowgun. For my weapon rankings for the demo, this weapon was ranked at 13, I believe, which is a bit sad. But I can give 3 reasons as to why I've changed my mind with the heavy bowgun with my time with it in the full game. Number 1, spread 3. Number 2, counter shot. And number 3, Wyvern Heart. Now, I do believe Countershot and Wyvern Heart were available in the demo, however, I don't think I realised how much damage these moves would be outputting in high rank. Holy moly. Same goes for Spread 3. Load up with the Pookie heavy bowgun and unload Spread 3 in a monster's face, and tell me that isn't satisfying. But light bowgun gets Spread 3 as well, you say? Well, sure, but can it charge Spread 3? No sir, and that's half the fun. The slow nature of heavy bowgun actually has its advantages in my experience. In fact, I like to plant my feet in one spot and dare the monster to come at me, so I can counter shot at it right back. And there's just nothing like unloading Wyvern Heart on a down monster. I just wish that more weapons had it. It seems like the devs really favoured Wyvern Snipe, which has a shorter cooldown, but just takes way too much time to set up for the damage you get from it. It's just way too situational. But those are my thoughts on the heavy bowgun. Definitely a lot of fun to mess with when I want to mix things up. Number 7, the Hunting Horn. Hunting Horn feels almost like a new weapon to this game, considering how much it has changed since previous entries. And with that being said, since the demo, my feelings about the Hunting Horn haven't changed too much. Sure, it's not as broken as it was, but I think now it's a perfectly balanced weapon for all the utility it has. One of my favourite things about the Hunting Horn is its pick up and play style. It's just great that you can go into a hunt and pretty much just push buttons and still be helping out your teammates. Not only that, but you look stylish as hell doing it. The satisfying feeling I get when playing Horn is playing the Magnificent Trio and then following it up with the Infernal Melody attack that spins the weapon like a Beyblade. I just love landing the KO with that move. It's just dopamine central. And who doesn't love having a Hunting Horn in their party? Free buffs, possible heals, and extra KO potential. What's not to love? My only gripe with Hunting Horn is the switch skills don't exactly excite me. This weapon comes out of the box perfect. It's like modding a Ferrari. What's the point? Anyway, I don't have anything against it, and with that being said, I still don't see it being a main weapon for me, so it sits right in the middle. Number 6, the Hammer. In my weapon rankings for the demo, I put Hammer at number 1, and that was coming from someone who'd never played Hammer before. However, in anticipation for Rise, I played a lot of Hammer in Monster Hunter World and Generations Ultimate. When coming back to Rise, it felt too much like playing World with slight differences, that being the Y-bugs. Not that World was bad, but that it was more of the same, so that special feeling when starting a new game was dampened slightly. Don't get me wrong, I still love bringing the hammer out and going full Unga Bunga mode, and that's why it remains so high on my list. But I can't honestly say it's my top 5 anymore. I think the most drastic change brought to the weapon was Water Strike, which I haven't utilised much because counters just feel weird with a hammer. In my eyes, it should be all offense, no defense, like its charging counterpart, the Greatsword. And I won't lie, the hammer has been hindered by just about every weapon's ability to KO, while hammer remains to be a weapon that can't cut tails. Which brings me back to my idea from before. Should the hammer be given an ability that allows it to deal cutting damage for a period of time? What do you guys think? Coming in at number 5 are the good old dual blades. This weapon is my go-to when I just want to turn my brain off, go into a hunt, and just mash buttons to win. Now, by no means am I saying dual blades is a brain-dead weapon. Just like any weapon, if you go in not thinking at all, you're gonna cart. But with dual blades, the loop is fast and simple. Go into demon mode, wail, dodge, repeat. Every now and then, you get to pull off a counter, similar to the Adept Dodge in Generations Ultimate, which I love. And another similarity from that game, aerial dual blades is back. Although, you have to be careful when using the aerial style, because you are often left wide open, so timing is important for that. However, I just love the simplicity of dual blades. No intricate combo paths or loops to worry about, just good old duck, dodge and press X. I know I'm gonna trigger someone by saying that, but that's just my take. At the moment, my favourite dual blades build is a full Magnamalo set with the Magnamalo dual blades. I add attack and razor sharp decodes to the 2 slots, and speed sharpening and stamina thief to the 1 slots, and a talisman with divine blessing level 2 and punishing draw level 2 as a bonus. That Hellfire cloak skill is seriously underrated. I've boasted some serious damage with this build. It's worth giving a shot, and the talisman isn't even important. Number 4, the Switch Axe. Now, the Switch Axe always had to make top 5 for me, since it was the second main weapon I ever picked up in a Monster Hunter game. But I just can't see myself putting it above the next 3 for a few reasons. For one, it really lacks defensive options when many of the other weapons either have strong retreating options, counters, or moves that absorb attacks. While Switch Axe does have Invincible Gambit, you can still take a lot of damage unwittingly while doing so. The same goes for zero-sum discharges. Sure, you can move away with Switch Charger, but I tend to use that to restore the sword gauge rather than an evasive maneuver. Personally, I take damage as a Switch Axe user more than any other weapon. To manage this, I make 3 levels of Evade Extender pretty much mandatory on my Switch Axe builds. But let me be clear, this is not necessarily a complaint, nor am I calling for a change. This is simply the reason I am placing the weapon on the list where I am. I think the Switch Axe is a weapon that is meant to be all about the offense. Tossing defense completely out the window is just a byproduct of that. Sure, to stay alive, DPS goes down between openings, but when a monster is disabled, there's no weapon that can capitalize on it better than the Switch Axe. One of the best things you can do with the Switch Axe is string 2 zero-sum discharges together with the help of Soaring Wyvern. As soon as you are thrown off the first zero-sum, you can launch straight back down with the Soaring Wyvern, and given you have enough sword gauge and enough time in the opening, you can go straight into another zero-sum. It's crazy! At this stage, I don't have a definitive endgame build to recommend at this stage for Switch Axe, but I would definitely recommend Evade Extender, Power Prolonger, and Rapid Morph if you're looking to get into the weapon. Number 3, Light Bowgun. This one was a shock to me. I've never been a huge fan of the gunning weapons, but as content was drying up for me in 300 hours of playtime, I thought, screw it. Why not? Let's try bowguns. Now at first, I made the mistake I have with every other Monster Hunter game and decided to build bowguns around the meta so I could get the best experience out of it. This is why I never saw the fun in it. You see, endgame bowguns are freaking broken. You're at a safe distance, dealing insane damage, while often completely disabling the monster with these builds. To me, this is not the Monster Hunter experience I fell in love with. If you're into that, all the power to you. But to me, I like to feel like there's a struggle going on, not an all-out massacre. So I thought, I wonder what it would be like to start a new game as a gunner. No money to buy ridiculous amounts of ammo, no ability to buy the most insane guns right from the get-go, just real hunter's improvisation. And that's the key here. Improvisation. I hadn't felt that since playing the classic Monster Hunter games like Freedom Unite, 3U and 4U. The feeling of planning your hunts and actually meaningfully foraging for items in the open world because you need a lot of ammo and you can't afford to buy it at the start. That and each bowgun unlocked different ammo types as I progressed. I wasn't necessarily looking at the damage of the weapons at all. I was looking at the ammo types and thinking which types of ammo could be used most effectively to take down a monster. Sure, melee gives you variety with sharpness and elements and status to work with, but it's really got nothing on the level of the wide array of ammo types in bowguns. There's just so much to plan and think about. You think about the anatomy of the monster, its size, how it behaves and more before choosing a bowgun to hunt it with. Take a Royal Ludroth for example. It is one of the first monsters with a large body you need to fight. With that large body, pierce shots, you learn, are more effective because they hit more often through that large body. It's also got a tail to cut, so maybe I should bring some slicing ammo to cut it off. It moves around a lot. Maybe sticky ammo or paralysis ammo will help me to disable it. This is probably incredibly obvious to all the gunners out there, but the point I'm trying to get across is that playing as a gunner from the beginning of the game restored that Monster Hunter spark in me. So if there are any melee veterans out there that want to relive that sense of preparation before hunting, I recommend starting the game over as a gunner. I loved it. It's definitely worth a shot. Oh, and why is light bowgun way ahead of heavy bowgun? Fanning bolt to wyvern blast. That's it. Oh, and rapid fire, I guess. And at number 2, my second favourite weapon in Rise is none other than the gun lance. And I know what you're thinking. It's Blast Dash, isn't it? You're a simple-minded fool, drawn in by the zoom zooms. Well, firstly, how dare you make a correct assumption about my personality? And secondly, while that may be true about me, the Blast Dash isn't even what I love about gun lance in this game. While it is quite the flashy spectacle, I rather keep my shells topped up and close gaps with the ground splitter, which can lead straight into a fast worm stake blast, while also powering up all shelling, worm stakes and wyvern fire for a short period of time. While I do keep the Blast Dash as a switch skill when my wire bugs are on cooldowns, it's more of a last resort than a key part of my combos. Okay, now that I've needlessly defended myself about Blast Dash, let's get into the meat and potatoes of gun lance. When you first pick up the weapon, you may feel like you're chained to the ground, you can't roll, your movements feel slow, and combo paths seem confusing. Also, what the hell is shelling? But when you get the hang of movement and the advantages of shelling, you become an absolute pest to the monster. An exploding pest. You stick to it like glue, dealing extremely consistent damage due to the nature of shelling damage. And for those unacquainted, shelling damage does not scale with affinity. The only thing that affects it is the level of shelling of the gun lance or points in the skill artillery. Now, on paper that sounds bad, but it has its benefits. For one, shelling damage is quite generous to begin with, but on top of that, you won't lose damage to shelling over time with the reduction of sharpness. Also, shells will deal fixed damage no matter what part of the monster you hit, so you don't even need to worry about positioning as much, unless you want to be breaking specific parts. It is this consistency, and the spectacle of explosions, that draws me to this weapon. Plus it's a freaking gun inside a lance! Isn't that the most awesome thing you've ever heard of? And here we are at number 1 with none other than the Insect Glaive. I knew you'd become something better than the demo. It broke my heart to rank you so low on my demo rankings. But you're a man now. And I'm so proud. For some ungodly reason, Capcom wanted us to stay the heck away from the Insect Glaive based on what they gave us in the demo. Thanks to die-hard IG mains like myself, we found out Insect Glaive was not only playable in Rise, but they turned it into what it really should be, an aerial powerhouse. In previous games, you'd feel compelled to stay planted on the ground in order to deal the best damage possible, because there was no question that was more effective. Unless of course you're like me, because I couldn't care less about DPS, I just want to kill the monster. But in Rise, the longer you extend your aerial combo, the more damage you do. Couple this with the skill Diving Wyvern as the combo finisher, and the damage from that attack will scale depending on the amount of hits in the aerial combo. And these numbers are unprecedented for Insect Glaive, not usually known for big single hit attacks, and more so as a fast hitting medium damage weapon. The Insect Glaive has grown into much more of an all-rounder and a respectable powerhouse. Now, of course, with Insect Glaive being my first ever weapon in the Monster Hunter series, I'm not biased at all, so take my word as gospel. Insect Glaive is the definitive best weapon in Rise. Did it work? Did I trigger someone? Anyway, it's certainly my favourite weapon in the game, and by far the most mobile. Chaining Silkbind vaults and aerial dodges together covers nutty distances and keeps you airborne for so long. You can literally plan your attack from the sky. It's wonderful. When I play Glaive, I feel safe. I feel like I can't possibly lose. It's comfy. It's my main, and I love it. So, what did you think of my list? I'd love to hear about what you think in the comments, whether you love it, hate it, or simply have something to add. Anyway, it's good to be back making content. Hopefully someone sees this. If not, it was still fun. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, all the good stuff. I've been King Rob Rule, and I'll see you in the next video. See ya!